What up, everyone? This is Brenton.
And Jenna.
This podcast is all about connecting with our Autumn family in a fun and different kind of way.
So turn down that CB, buckle up, and enjoy the show. It's going to be truckin' awesome.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the Autumn Transport Podcast. My name is Brenton. I'm the Liquid Tank Division Fleet Manager here at Autumn Transport. And I'm joined today by a special guest. Drew Koppen is with me today. Drew was an employee here for a few years at Autumn and taught me a lot of skills and things that I needed to know in the role that I'm in. He was a good friend, and he was fantastic at suggesting craft beers. He's the guy if you want to know what's a good beer in the craft beer market. But I brought him in today to talk a little bit about what it means to be value-driven, driver-focused, customer-driven. We're going to talk about all those things today. Thanks for being here, Drew.
Thanks for having me.
So how long ago was it that you were at Autumn?
Oh, you're going to make me do math. About 8 years ago, I was at Autumn. Came in, worked in the liquid tank division with you. Loved working with you. About 2 weeks after I started, Lowell announced that he had been diagnosed with cancer. Julie assumed the role of president and CEO, which she had been obviously been training for her entire career here. And so when she did that, she was the director of operations. After she made that transition, I transitioned into the director of operations here at Autumn, and love the time that I spent here.
That really brings back some memories of that time. I can't believe it was that long ago already. Were you in the trucking industry before you came to Autumn?
I was. I actually started in transportation. Funny enough, I was a paper boy when I was 11.
So your whole life you've been in transportation.
Right. I didn't come from a trucking family, but from 11 years old. And the reason I bring that up is my mom instilled in me, sometimes very forcefully, that the transaction, the putting the paper on the stoop wasn't the job. The job was you needed to make sure that the person had their news, that they had the classified ads to know if there was a job out there, or a house that they needed, or a car that they needed, or the obituaries if someone had passed away, a friend or former coworker. And if you delivered that paper and it was wet or torn or missing, blew away, anything like that, that might really affect that person's life. And so I bring that up because that's a value that I brought with me throughout my entire career. That it's not about delivering something from one place to the other. It's about the people that it affects, making their lives better, helping to make their lives better. So that's really where I got my start. After that, that put me through my first 2 years of college, which tells you how cheap college used to be back in those days.
You paid for your first 2 years of college by delivering papers.
From the time I was 11 till I was about 17, which that took care of about the first 2 years, right? Wow. But college isn't only 2 years. So the second 2 years I worked for UPS, unloaded trucks, sorted packages for them, and then went on to Roadway Express. I got my CDL there. And after that, worked for a company that was bought by Roadrunner Transportation, was a LTL regional company. That was my first management stint, opened up a terminal for them and was their terminal manager. After that, I was fortunate enough to be able to come and run the brokerage division at BJ Transport, which is now driver-driven transportation. And so I had my first experience with, running a division and knowing what brokerage is and understanding long-haul trucking from there. And then not too long after that, I came over to Autumn as their first working in liquid tanks and then as their director of operations at that. And BJ Transport was sold. The founding owners, they retired. Their children retired and sold to the president of the company, who had been with the company for 35 years. He put together an ownership group, changed the name of the company to driver-driven transportation to better reflect the values of serving the drivers. And was fortunate enough that he asked me back. I must have fooled him once early, but he asked me to come back and be their director of operations there, and I said yes, because the two companies that I've worked for that I love the culture the most are Autumn Transport and BJ Transport, driver-driven transportation.
So how long have you been at Driver Driven now?
About a year. Yep, they were sold. The new ownership group took over a little over a year ago. So I got to be part of a rebrand, I've never done that in my career. It was very exciting. Loved that work, really being able to build a brand from scratch, but also with a history, with 44-year history of the company behind it. So the strength and stability of those 44 years, but then getting to rebrand yourself, it was, a very interesting thing, very interesting process to me. So,
well, speaking of rebranding and paper routes and paying for college, just last weekend, so we're recording today, it's Tuesday, June 13th. On Sunday, my daughter graduated from high school.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was never a doubt with this one. She's been on the ball with everything. Now, the one I got coming up next, we'll see. I think he's currently on track, but
sure.
I got faith. But sure. So she graduated and she's off to Bethel University over in Roseville, Minnesota this fall.
Great.
And looking at the things that we're getting from Bethel already, she probably should have started delivering papers when she was about 2.
Right.
College is, man, it's insane.
Yes.
Going to university, especially this is a Christian liberal arts private school that she's chosen. And I'm a graduate from Bethel. I couldn't be more thrilled that my daughter's going to be there carrying on the legacy. And I know she'll thrive, but yeah, expensive.
It's an investment for sure. We put 2 through college, and yeah, it doesn't get, even from the point when the first one graduated to when the next one started, it was your expectations. No one can prepare you for what those costs are going to be. But,
yeah. I think I remember your older daughter, she actually worked for Autumn for just a little bit, didn't she? Or interned? Or?
Yep, she interned for a summer. Yeah, she did a lot of the calling the drivers, and one of her big projects was making sure one year Autumn, and I still have this coat, had this wonderful Carhartt-like jacket, embroidered jacket. Really, one of the things I love about Autumn, they don't skimp on their swag.
Yeah,
they have really good stuff, and she called and made sure that every driver's sizing was correct, and the drivers got to talk to a fresh voice, and they would comment to me about getting to talk to her, and that she had a good phone voice and all of that. So yeah, and she took that experience that she had in trucking and transportation, and now she's in supply chain management for Boston Scientific. So she's still in transportation herself. So
yeah, that was Elena, right?
That was Elena, yes.
Okay, and she maybe was right at that point where she was getting to actually enjoy like a beer 30. The
nice thing is, if you raise them and you introduce them to the good stuff, it's a little less temptation to imbibe too much into the bad stuff. So even though they had that, hopefully they were introduced correctly to alcohol, because they're going to be introduced to it one way or the other. It's either going to be in the safety and security with their parents, and or it's going to be not. And so both of them, they both have a far more expensive taste, especially going through college, than what their pocketbooks could.
Yeah, so, you raised them up right, but you raised them with high expectations.
Right. Well, it brings them back home. They could get the good stuff back at home. So if that brought them back home a little bit more, then hey, I'll take it.
There you go. And you mentioned the Autumn swag. No surprise that you like that stuff, because you're looking pretty great yourself here today.
Oh, thank you.
Dressed up real. You didn't have to dress up. It's not a video podcast.
It's not. Okay.
It's just audio. Do you remember what first brought you to Autumn? Like when you came here, how you found the company, kind of some of your first impressions?
Driver-driven transportation is only a few miles away from here. And I live in this area, and you drive by, but when you're in the industry for as long as I have, you drive by places and you say, oh, what are they all about? I've never, I don't know what they do. with working so close, we'd actually done some work together. A long time ago, Autumn had a brokerage partner, had a dry van division.
Yep, that was a long time ago.
And we had done some work together and had a good relationship. And for asset-based trucking companies that also have a brokerage, your brokerage is so important it's your reputation of your company, right? Your name gets spread by the quality of service that you give to your customers, but also if you have a brokerage division, how you treat other carriers. Are you educated in your own freight? Do you pay a fair rate, right? When you're talking company and the driver and you're educating them about what your freight is, do you know what you're talking about? All of those things are so important to a company because a brokerage department is within the trucking company that's establishes your relationship. So if you're unfair, and there are, I won't name them, but there are companies out there that they look at their brokerage department and as a completely separate entity, but they share a name with it. Well, that affects their reputation. So I know at Autumn and also at Driver Driven that our brokerage department, we really do see it as an extension of our trucking side. In working together, and freight in Minneapolis, St. Paul area is a small community. You are known, and it's, people can be tough judges if they have a bad experience with you, if they have one bad experience with you. So I knew Autumn's reputation. And also, we have drivers that used to drive for Autumn, and Autumn may very well, during their time, have had drivers that drove for Driver Driven or BJ, because sometimes you want to haul bulk, sometimes you want to haul dry van, sometimes you just want to try something different. So I had some insight into how the company ran. And quite honestly, I just saw at that point in time, I was working in consulting. I was consulting with a 3PL and a warehouse, cold storage warehouse, that was ISO 9001 certified, which is a quality management. It's a quality standard, basically, and you get tested by external auditors. And I was helping them to increase their quality and to pass their audits. And that project had come to an end, and I had to make the decision of, am I going to keep on doing this consulting work, or am I going to, do I want to be part of a company again? And at that point in time, I was very interested in having a team around me, because when you're a consultant and you do a great job and you knock it out of the park, you walk out, you high five yourself, and you get in your car and you drive home.
No one to go have a celebratory beer with.
Right, exactly. And when you take one on the chin, you don't have corner people there to stitch you back up and put ice on your chest and kick you in the butt and say, get back out there again.
Sure. Yeah.
And so at that point in time, I was very interested in having a team, a healthy team, and a company that had been around for quite a while and was financially strong and financially stable. I remember in my interview with Julie, we talked, and I said, I don't really care what I do. You need me to clean the toilets, I'll clean the toilets, right? When you walk into this building, you can feel the positive culture and the support that is happening here, and you want to be a part of it. So she just, she hired me, and she kind of moved me where I needed to go. And that's a principle that her and I talked about when we would hire people of, right person, right seat. So if you have someone who is the right person for your organization, you get them on the bus and you figure out the seat that is best matches their talents and their skills and their capabilities. But if they're a cultural match for your company, you bring them in. And that's what she did with me. Even though it was before we had kind of talked about that theory and put words to it, that was still a value that she had and that she held. And that's how she used me. So
that's kind of does that go back to Jim Collins and his book, Good to Great? The right people on the bus in the right seats?
Yes, it is. And it's picked up by a great book called Traction by Gino Wickman, who does cite Good to Great quite a bit.
Okay.
So yeah, he talks about, basically a matrix of the right people for the organization. So you can have someone who is a great cultural fit for your organization, but you don't have necessarily the best place for them. And I was here when we hired Chris Hendricks and Gideon Bolson, and both of them were like, we don't have the right seat for you, and we know that, but we want you on the bus.
Yeah.
And we know that you're quality people, and those two hires have been absolutely fantastic, right? Still here.
Definitely.
And real game changers for this organization. Neither one of them started out in the role that they're at. You know their history, that they've kind of bounced around and gone where they've been needed, and then they've found what their unique skill and their unique ability is that they can also be like truly passionate about, and then they just flourish.
Yeah.
Right. But that doesn't come I think too many companies are too narrow when they hire people, and they only look at skill set and they don't look at the person. So that's something, I always say what I'm looking for in people is, are you humble? Are you hungry? And are you smart?
Okay, I need to stop you.
Right?
I need to stop you because you just said, say that again. What do you always look for when you hire people?
Are you humble? Are you hungry? And are you smart?
So this summer at the office, I'm leading what we're calling Lunch and Learn. And so one Monday of the month, June, July, and August, we're getting the staff together, we're having lunch together, and I'm showing a TED Talk. Mm-hmm. So a 15 to 17 minute video presentation from thought leaders in all different industries. Mm-hmm. And we just had our first one yesterday.
And it was Patrick Lencioni, I bet.
It was Patrick Lencioni talking about how to be the ideal team player.
Exactly.
And you just quoted him. The talk was all about making sure that your people are the combination of humble, hungry, and smart.
Correct.
So very ironic that we would have you here today and you'd be quoting that exact thing.
Well, it shows just how similar the cultures are in the company. Because how do you get that culture? Companies love to talk. We have a great culture. Okay, well, define what your culture is, right? Define that. What do you mean by that? It's easy to say I have a great culture, but one, how do you build it? And how do you keep it going, right? And one of the ways that you build your culture is you hire people of similar attributes, personal attributes, right? They have different skills. Like you need accountants, and you need your numbers people, and you need your sales. You need your charismatic people that are out there, and all that. But are there shared values? Are there shared qualities that you have? And you're only going to build an organization that is humble, hungry, and smart if you hire in people who are humble, hungry, and smart, and you promote those people who are humble, hungry, and smart. And that's, a foundational way that you start building that culture.
And just to be clear here, when we're using the word smart, we're not specifically talking about mental smartness, so to speak, like the testing scores and things like that, but it has to do a lot with emotional intelligence. And are you smart in the way you get along with others and respect others and reading a room and how you treat other people in that room? That is all part of the smart category that Drew and I are referencing here.
Right. So smart to me is, can you look at the whole picture and can you make great long-term decisions, right? Or are you just making the short-term decisions that serve your interests at that point in time? Because sometimes you have to sacrifice the short term. Sometimes you're really upset or angry with one of your teammates.
That sounds like the difference between being flippant and being wise.
Right. Exactly. So you might be frustrated with them or in a frustrating situation, but long term, you have to build that relationship, right? And that you have to work through those. You have to find the root cause, and you just have to, chill out a little bit and say, well, what's the best long-term decision in this? Similarly, I think a lot of people get humble wrong. So Patrick Lencioni says, being humble, I want to make sure I get this right. Being humble is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking about yourself less, right?
Yep,
so
I think that's a C.S. Lewis quote.
Okay.
That he stole, but yes, you stated it correctly.
Yes, everybody steals everything. Nothing should be copyrighted. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants as far as our ideas go. So for me, I look at someone who puts the team ahead of themselves. And when I either start in a new organization or I'm hiring someone, I always try to make the deal with them of saying, you put the team first and I'll watch out for you, right? I don't expect you to put the team first at the sacrifice of your own career, at the sacrifice of your own ideas, at the sacrifice of who you are. Know that I have your back as long as you're putting your team first. And sometimes people have a hard time trusting that because they've been burned in other companies before that aren't as healthy in that way. And if you give and give and give and give and give, they'll take and take and take and take and take. And our society, I think, too many times, and too many corporations, too many organizations reward those people who are constantly self-promoting themselves and constantly pushing their way to the top.
Instagram influencers.
Exactly. And we've all worked with people or for people who, steal other people's ideas and don't say, hey, this was a great idea that Brenton had, and I'm now, bringing it to Julie or to Chris or to Josh or whoever I'm bringing it to, and not giving you the credit that you want, right? Because in that situation, again, putting the team first, if it's good for the company, who cares where it came from? I mean, I should want to give you credit for that. And it doesn't have to be, when it's like, well, this has to be my idea for it to work. That's a sign, that's the opposite of humility. That's pride. That's pride in a toxic way, right? We want to take that self-pride in our work, but being arrogant or being, putting yourself first before others. And then I suppose we should address hungry, right? Hungry is also misconstrued from time to time, where you can't have an organization where everyone is clawing to be the president of the company. That's not what hungry means. That's not what it means to me. Because you do have some people who hunger for excellence every day, but they are completely happy in the role that they're in. And they say, they'll say, I just want to do this exact same job until I retire. And I love this job so much, but they have hunger for excellence. They have hunger for their drivers, right? Wanting to see their drivers succeed. They have hunger for, some people have hunger to make sure that for their family, for their home life and their family life. And so they excel at work but they want that work-life balance as well, right? So it's more so the lack of hunger is when it's kind of like you can't put your finger on, like, what are you passionate about in this, right? And this goes back to another traction principle of how do you assess, how do you analyze if someone is good at their job? And it's, do they get it? Do they understand their job, right? Fully, the good, the bad, the ugly, the obvious stuff, and maybe some of the tasks that aren't so obvious, right? So like for a driver check call, right? You call up the driver, hey, check and see where this driver's at. And, 5 seconds later, the phone's hung up and they say, they're in Newark, New Jersey. It's like, well, that's not the purpose of a check call, right? You also want to see, how's the driver doing, right? How are the equipment operating, right? Are you listening in the driver's voice? Are they frustrated about something? Are they short? Are they in a great mood, right? How are you built? The check call is there to build your relationship with your driver. And so that there's a task and then there's the reason behind the task. And so do people understand not just the checkbox of what they're supposed to be doing, but the reasons behind that checkbox? So that's the get it, right? Mm-hmm. And then once they get it, do they actually want to do that job? Do they want it, right?
Yeah.
Or do they only want to do this job to get to the next job? Well, what I really want to do is, I want to be the liquid tank division manager, right? And I'll do this, but it's not really what I want to do, right? And there's nothing wrong with wanting to get promoted, but when you're in that job, you have to do that job to the best of your ability at that level, at that station that you're at. Do they have the capacity to do it, right? Do they have the tools? Can they use the tools, right? Can they go back and forth from the computer to the phone and not get lost, and not forget to do things, right? Do they have the And capacity is also about temperament, right? Are you someone who is a hothead, right? As soon as something doesn't go your way, you're slamming the phone and pushing the papers off of your desk, So you can have all the capacity in the world mentally to do the job, but if you don't have the temperament to do the job, well, you still don't have that. That's part of capacity as well. And that's all traction. And I think that there's one more piece to that. There's get it, want it, capacity to do it. And then the real kicker, the trump card on this is, are you passionate about it? Is there something about your job that you can be passionate about? And it doesn't have to be liquid tanks, right? You don't have to be passionate about liquid tanks. You can be passionate about your drivers being successful, right? And I've seen it. I've watched you work where when you put together an awesome week for a driver, you are like pumping your fist and you're like, Drew, come over here. Look at this week I have put together for this driver, right? And this guy's going to make so much money, or this gal's going to make so much money, right?
Yeah.
So I see that in the podcast, which I loved with Bev and Julie, that episode, which anybody out there, if they haven't listened to that, go listen to that episode.
It's called The Origins of Autumn Transport.
They were talking about their favorite Lowell stories or their favorite Lowellisms. And one of the things that I asked Julie and Bev about Lowell was, why trucking? Why did you start the business? And they told the story of they had the farm, they wanted to get their grain to the elevator or whatever. But Bev said, the real reason was Lowell was passionate about making deals. He loved making deals. And in trucking, you get to make a lot of deals, right? In grain and selling your grain, you get to make a lot of deals, right?
Right.
And owning a nightclub, which is one of the things that he tried to do that didn't work out so well, you get to make some deals, but not as many deals as you are in trucking. You're not always buying tractors and trailers and negotiating with brokers or buyers or whatever. And Lowell loved to make deals, and this was his outlet. So was he passionate about, hoppers or tankers or anything like that? Sure, to a certain extent, but really it was a means to an end for him to get to make a lot of deals. And so you don't have to be passionate about the exact thing, but there should be something in there that really, lights your fire a little bit. And so if I'm interviewing someone and I'm interviewing them for some type of a leadership position, and they say, well, one of my passions is developing people. And I'll look and we'll talk. And the things I look for are, well, what are you donating your time to, right? Because that's what you're passionate about, are the things that you'll do for free.
Sure.
Right? And so are you a coach, right? If you're passionate about developing people, have you done any coaching? Are you a Boy Scout or Girl Scout troop leader? Are you, is there something that you do for free to fulfill that passion in you? And if there's not, I'm not saying I don't believe them, but I believe someone who does have that more than someone who maybe doesn't. And there are a lot of people out there who you ask them, well, what are you passionate about? And they can't tell you. If you're one of those people, look at what you love to do for free, and that will tell you what your passion is. And it might not be, if you're on a softball team or whatever, you look forward to softball or your volleyball league or whatever. It might not be the softball or the volleyball. It might be being part of a group that just has fun together. And I think that there's in organizations, those are usually good people for your organization, because really, what is a company? What is any organization? There's a group of people coming together to solve a problem, solving your customers' problems. Every company exists to solve a problem for somebody. And if you're not solving somebody's problem, you're not going to be a company for long, because, any one of your customers, Brenton, can go out and buy trucks, go out and buy trailers and haul their own product on it. But they don't want to, right? They either the scale and the scope and the investment is too high, or the expertise is too high to do it, or they just want to focus on what they do best and let you take care of what you do best. So you're solving a problem for them. and you have your group in liquid tanks that are come together. And when you solve a problem together, there's something very fulfilling about that. I believe that there is a basic human need for a lot of people to be a part of a group that solves problems together. Our human survival for however long that we've been human beings has hinged on that ability for us to be together and solve problems. And so
I feel like I'm getting a graduate level course here in leadership development. I need to like be taking notes because there's so many things here that you're saying that are just so true and right on. I want to go back to a couple things if we could.
Sure.
One thing that you said a little bit ago that I think is so true, and I just want to point out, is that idea of here at Autumn, and I want to recognize Julie, our CEO, and the leaders that she's had around her. Drew, you were a part of this at one time. We always have been a company that has focused on putting the right people in the right seats on the bus. Mm-hmm. And that has involved moving some people around, dispatchers that were in liquid tanks that went to pneumatics, someone like Chris who was running hoppers and then running pneumatics, and he's now in our business strategist role. And wanting to make sure that people are able to use the gifts that they have specific to them to fulfill the job. But like you mentioned, that they are the right people for Autumn.
Correct.
Because Autumn, it's not for everyone. Not everyone has always been a cultural fit here. Mm-hmm. And most of those people have, well, at this point, all of those people have moved on. And then someone like yourself, who was a great cultural fit, you were able to find a great cultural fit in another place, and that's great. But I just wanted to recognize that I think we have done a great job of doing that here. And the same thing is true for our drivers. So I don't want anyone to tune out here and think we're just talking about office workers here and the things that they're doing, because I think so much of what you said is right in line with drivers too.
Absolutely.
Sometimes the pneumatic fleet isn't the right fit for a driver, but he loves Autumn and he'd just like to try a come into liquid tanks, or a guy who's run hoppers wants to try pneumatics. And Autumn has been a place where guys have that ability to try out a different division without having to leave the company.
Exactly.
How would you apply those things that you were saying about, you kind of gave 3 or 4 things, you talked about passion and temperament, into how drivers can be most successful?
Sure. Well, the same thing goes for drivers, right? Is that, it goes back to how a driver can be passionate about what they're doing is by always seeing the person in the transaction. And that can be tough for drivers, right? Because you don't always, you're the face of the company in a lot of ways, but sometimes where you're going into, you don't always necessarily see the effects of you bringing product to somebody else. So the passionate side of it, and it can be hard. I have a Class A myself. And I drove for a number of years. So I know that as you're going throughout the day, from the time that you wake up some days to the time that you go to bed at night, you're not treated very well by sometimes your shippers, your receivers, by the general public, four-wheelers cutting you off, the whole thing. And it can be hard. You're looking through the windshield and you're kind of stewing about what's going on, right? You say, well, why am I doing this? What's the purpose behind why I'm doing this, right? But just like young Drew on his paper route, you have to see the person behind the transaction. So when you bring product to someone, if there's something wrong, if it's a contaminated product, there's going to be a person there that's going to have a really bad day. If the wash, if you weren't thorough enough on your wash, you have to be passionate about that, because if you bring something in and it gets rejected, well, there might be a worker there at that place that gets sent home early because there's not enough work for them. And that worker might need that day's pay to make their life work, to pay their rent, to do all that. So remembering the person is so important. That's where Autumn's values come in. And Autumn has a great value statement, which we can talk about in a bit. But the right person for Autumn, I believe, as a driver, it's the same thing. Are you seeing the person? The culture of the office at Autumn affects you, right? Are you treated with honesty and respect? I always say to drivers, I can't control how the general public treats you. I can't control, if they're doing all the things that they do out there. When you go into the truck stops, I can't control any of that. But what I can control is, how do our dispatchers speak to you? How do I speak to you? Is it with respect? Is it with integrity? Now, that doesn't mean that I'm always going to tell you what you want to hear, right? Sometimes I have bad news I have to break to you, and sometimes we're going to have some tough conversations about, performance, both the driver's performance and the dispatcher's performance. Sometimes we're going to have problems that we're going to have to work through. But if the right fit as a driver and a right fit for an office employee is your aspiration to do the right thing for each other. And you might not get it right the first time, you might not get it right the second time, but you're committed to keep on trying until you do find a solution to get it right. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but those things absolutely apply to it. And the thing, I've met so many drivers that are passionate about trucking and their trucks and what they do, and that's and that's awesome. That's great. That's going to keep them trucking. But what's going to keep them trucking for Autumn and happy and not burnt out? You might have, I don't know the inside of your business as much anymore, but you might have drivers that literally are just driving from the same two places back and forth and back and forth. I don't know if you have those kind of dedicated lanes. Very easy to get burnt out doing that. You're looking at the same stretch of pavement and, going over the same thing. Are you building those relationships with the people who you do interact with? Are you building your relationship with your dispatcher? A driver and a dispatcher, a great relationship between a driver and a dispatcher is a wonderful thing. So I think that's how what we were just talking about applies to drivers. That makes sense.
Yeah. I've been here almost 10 years. Unbelievably, it'll be 10 years in September, and worked with a lot of drivers over the course of that time. Have had multiple different dispatchers who work with me and for me, some who are no longer at Autumn. And all these things that you're talking about really stand out in terms of what success looks like. And really that concept of treating one another from a dispatcher to driver, driver to dispatcher relationship from that perspective, trying to understand what each one of you is going through throughout the course of the day. And I talk to my team in tanks all the time about when you take a check call, you were going over some of this earlier, Drew, but it isn't just a flat, where are you, when are you going to be there? I mean, that's very transactional, and it leaves both parties, kind of empty when the conversation is over. And not that in the course of every day, you're going to have time for a 10, 15-minute chat about life and the philosophies of everything that's going on. But yeah, if you're a driver and you had a long night because you had to park in a pretty cruddy spot and you didn't get a good breakfast because the truck stop was dirty and you didn't want to eat there, and then you've driven through Chicago all day and the traffic has been horrible, and you arrive 10 minutes before closing and they say, well, sorry, we can't get to you today. You just haven't had any wins all day.
Right.
The last thing that should happen is that you call in to your dispatcher and you get another loss. Mm-hmm. We want to be the type of dispatching team here where we take a call and we're able to encourage a guy. And like you said, we're working for the good of one another and for the success of one another. And the same thing when a driver calls, how they're treating that dispatcher. If you call in and you're just firing away and you're mad and you're yelling right off the top, that conversation's probably not going to go very well.
Right.
Because you haven't approached the conversation with the same level of respect and partnership and thinking, how's my dispatcher going to feel when he takes this call?
Right.
So I think about all the drivers that I've had and, some of the very best ones that have been and still are at Autumn. And they are the type of person with the right temperament, as you mentioned earlier, for the job and the passion for the job, that they go into every pickup, every delivery wanting it to be a positive experience. If another driver calls them, they take the call and they want to help that other driver. Like you mentioned, when the company succeeds, we all succeed.
We need our drivers to be successful, right? And at the end, the drivers need to get financially what they need to make their lives work, right? What I would say is that that's a necessary condition. That's kind of the lowest bar. But a sufficient condition is that you're also looking out for the team and that you are concerned with the company's image and with your own image and all of that. So that you need to have both of those things. I think sometimes the old driver in me hears that, well, I got to take another one for the team, and when is someone going to take one for me, right? Those are tough conversations to have. But if the driver, again, to me as a driver, as a former driver, I call it the kind of the smoothie outlook on life. When you have a smoothie, right, or a shake or whatever it is, you're throwing a bunch of different things in there. And you might not like one thing that's in there, right? You might not like the kale that's in your smoothie, right? But that's very healthy for you. But if you blend it all up and at the end of the day it tastes good, then I'm not going to sit there and complain about the kale that's in there and fixate on that. I'm going to say, you know what? No company's perfect. No trucking company that I've ever worked for is perfect. But at the end of the day, I'm getting what I need out of this. And I'm getting treated fairly. I can trust my dispatcher. Even if they give me bad news, it's going to be the honest news on that. And, it's sometimes, and I've been through this myself as a driver, you can get so fixated on the thing that you don't like that it ruins the whole thing for yourself. So again, it gets back to that's the smart side of just what's your best long-term choice here? Is it to leave and go chase somewhere else? Or is it to stay despite the fact that, hey, maybe I had a rough week, maybe I had a rough couple weeks, but at the end of the day, I know I'm going to get the truth. I know I'm going to get treated with respect, and I know I'm with a company that actually cares about my success and my well-being. And unfortunately, that's not the norm in trucking. That's the exception and not the rule in trucking. I'm sorry I interrupted you there, but I thought that was an important point. We can't just gloss over that they need, it needs to work for your life. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely was not my intent to ever say that it's all about the success of the organization and not about the success of the driver.
Right.
One of the things I tell every single new hire that we have is, without your success, we have no success.
Right.
We're a model where we own trailers, but we have owner-operator partners who pull those trailers. Those trailers don't make any money when they're sitting there.
Right.
So without the drivers that we have here at Autumn, those owner-operators that come and partner with us, we have no organizational success. And so definitely thank you for calling that out.
Yeah.
I would never want anyone to think I thought otherwise. You mentioned, I am very passionate about the success of my drivers. As a trucker's kid, which I think I somehow say every episode, so you've probably heard that before, but I learned firsthand about what it's like for a driver out there, what a good company is and how the driver's treated with a good company, and how a driver feels when they're treated the way they are at a bad company. Because I saw my dad go through it. And he loved Autumn. It's probably the main reason I'm at Autumn was because how he was treated here and the experience he had. And the last thing that I would ever want to do would be to soil that legacy and experience for others. Now, one of the things that I think is pretty cool about having you here today is that our company and your company have pretty similar taglines. You pointed this out. Our company here at Autumn, we say, is values-driven, service delivered. And over at your company, Driver Driven, your company tagline is driver focused, customer driven.
Correct.
Would you mind kind of diving in and talking a little bit about where you see alignment and specifically what your company's driver focused, customer driven tagline is all about?
Sure. So to echo off of what you just said, when we rebranded the company, we could have called it anything. We could have named it after the owner's names, the owner's initials, St. Croix Valley Trucking, whatever we wanted to. But we looked around and we said, you know what? nobody puts driver on the side of the truck. And like you just said, if there's no driver, nothing else works, right? The country comes to a standstill if there aren't drivers out there.
There's no food in the grocery stores. There's no furniture in the furniture stores. There's no gas at the gas stations.
Right, exactly. So we said, what is the one indispensable thing? You don't need a director of operations to have a trucking company. You don't need a president of the company to have a company. But you need a driver. And so it's a statement of how important the driver is to us, and that they deserve to have their name on the side of the truck. Unfortunately, we don't have enough decals to put everyone's specific name on the side, and that would probably be a nightmare for our accounting department, having all of those authorities to have all those different names. And it's rare to see that out there, to even have a reference to the driver out there. And I've said, having worked for both the companies, now to kind of address your main question here, having worked for both of the companies, they are so similar culturally. I say a lot, you could put the two companies' cultures together and you could probably barely slip a piece of paper between the two of them. And, that's not by accident. I don't believe that that's some random thing that happened. I believe that there are certain people of certain character and quality that are going to build like organizations. And that tells me that the principles that those companies are founded on are in truth and in some type of an objective truth, right? And so, our tagline, is really, how do we service the customer? And it's by focusing on the driver, because our driver is the face of our company. And so our whole setup has become, how do we best take care of our driver? What are the things that the driver needs that we can give or that we can provide for that driver, right? Obviously, money is a big thing, but respect. A lot of drivers say that if they are answering surveys, money, pay, benefits, whatever it is always at the top.
Sure.
But almost always, that second thing is respect. Do I feel respected in the job that I do? And unfortunately, society sometimes pays lip service to drivers, but really, we all know how drivers get treated in the general society. So we have said that our method for servicing our customer is through our drivers, right? Most of our customers have been with us for decades and decades and decades. Our customer base is very, very stable. Our average driver tenure is about 6.5 years, and our driver retention rate is over 80%. So a lot of trucking companies, they lose more drivers than they keep every year. And a lot of our drivers leave because they retire from us. So we've actually changed a lot of things around. We were always an owner-operator, or for the most part, an owner-operator model, lease purchase. And but as drivers get closer to retirement, we found that it was a tough decision for them to make, to say, well, do I sign a new lease? If I want a new tractor, right? Do I sign a new lease and commit myself to 5 or 6 more years of driving? I don't really want to do that. I don't quite know when I can retire. It's going to depend on the stock market, and that's going to depend on all these other things, right? So I'm not quite sure when I want to retire. And I'm at the end of my lease, but I want a newer tractor, right? And so we came up with a program where our drivers that are close to retirement, we'll actually put them in brand new trucks as a company driver, so that they can have that dignity and respect and that payout without making that commitment to that. And we just put Charles in 2024 Volvo, I believe it was, brand new, and on our Facebook page with him standing out in front of this brand new tractor, and just the smile on his face was just, and he got up and he's like, can't believe how nice this is and all of that. And it's the perfect thing for him because, if he decides to retire in 6 months or if he decides to retire in 2 years, that is now something that he has the power to do. So that's just one example of, and now when he goes out to our customers, you better believe he still has that huge smile on his face.
Yeah.
You better believe that he's, when he's taking care of that tractor as if it was his own, right? Probably even better than if it was his own. So that's a neat program and just an example of some of the things that we've done to be more driver focused and how that drives service, excellent service to the customer.
Yeah, I think you can really do a great job of meeting your customers' needs by meeting the driver's needs first. I like the way that you're talking about that. And I think it goes so far if a driver if he's happy, if he's feeling good about his company, and he's going into that customer, that is going to reflect. Yeah, that guy, that unloader that he deals with, that person at the dock, that person helping him hook up at a tank, they're going to think, oh, well, this driver, he's a good guy. He was in a good mood. Mm-hmm. But not more importantly, but also they're going to see the logo on the truck as it drives away. They're going to see the thing on your trailer, your tagline or your company sticker. And they're going to say, oh, that driver that I really liked, he's an Autumn guy. Yep. I hope they send me more Autumn guys.
Right.
I hope I get another driver-driven guy on the next load because those are good guys.
Yeah.
And so a happy driver who's feeling good with their company, who's got a good relationship with his dispatcher, he's feeling respected, he's feeling successful. He's going to carry himself in that positive way. Yep. And in his interactions with the places he goes and he picks up and he drops off, they're going to get that same sense.
Absolutely.
And they're going to want more of an interaction with your company.
Absolutely. And it makes that loader or unloader or dock person or whoever you're interacting with, makes their day better, right? You might be the only person in that person's life that treats them well for those couple minutes. You might be the only person that shows them respect and dignity, basic human dignity. So again, this all gets back to putting the paper on the stoop. Are you making people's lives better, or are you not making people's lives better? And to me, at my stage of my career, I can choose where I want to go and work, and I'm just simply not interested in working for a company that's only goal is to make money. That if you're not making people's lives better, then what are you doing? How do you not burn out if you're not? It makes it so much easier to wake up in the morning, come into work because, hey, I get to make my coworkers' lives better. I get to make my drivers' lives better. I get to make my customers' lives better. And to never lose that connection that you should have is really something that, there's so much burnout in the workforce. We read about it in the newspapers and in the trade papers and all of that. What's driving that burnout? And I believe that part of it is the lack of interpersonal relationships. You're just sitting on your computer and, algorithms are talking to algorithms and you can't see how what you're doing is making someone's life better. I think that's for me, again, we're in business to make money. Making money is a necessary condition, but it's not a sufficient condition. That in and of itself isn't good enough. Fortunately, you look at the ledger of a lot of companies, companies have the capacity to make people's lives better. All companies have the capacity to make people's lives worse. And there's a lot of companies out there that I think are probably making people's lives a little bit worse. So it's a special thing and something that should be cherished and something that should be treasured when you find a company that its whole goal is to make people's lives better through trucking or through whatever it is that company decides to do. And that's where I believe that Autumn talks about their values, that their values are what drives things.
Yep. So we have them stenciled on the wall here at the office: integrity, service, leadership, and family.
Yep.
And those are the kind of the 4 pillars that we talk about here a lot, and want to make sure that we're acting with integrity in everything that we do and every interaction we have with a driver or a customer, trying to provide service in any way that we can, not only service from a purely pickup and drop off perspective, but how are we in the office serving our drivers and their needs while they're out on the road? And how are we serving one another? Anyone around here could pick up the plunger. Anybody back in the kitchen wipes down the counter because we serve one another.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership, everyone is a leader here at Autumn. Everybody has a responsibility. They have the ability to call the ball, we like to say, and to take up that ownership. And then ultimately, it all comes down to we're a family. We treat each other like family. We love each other like family. We respect each other like family. Yep. And we use those things to guide us in all the decisions that we make.
Right. And I think it bears a minute or two to talk about, what is a value? What is, Jan Markinson from Great West Casualty, I know that you've been on this same lecture. He loves to talk about what is a value and what is a priority, right?
Yep.
And what's the difference between those two things? A value doesn't change when the circumstances change, right?
Right.
Priorities do, right? So being on time is something that we want to be all of the time, right? But that is a priority. If safety, if there's a ice storm, or if there's something wrong with the trailer or tractor that makes it unsafe, needs new brakes, or something's malfunctioning, well, guess what? On time gets deprioritized in those specific circumstances. Not giving anyone a reason to just not be on time, because safety is a value, right? No matter what happens, safety has to come first. And so, and I encourage everyone listening to this to go to Autumn's website and go under the Who We Are portion of the website, and it'll talk about the values underneath there. There's a tab that talks about the values.
You've been stalking us.
You probably, I'm actually one of the few that actually likes your content, Brenton. So I know that you do the website, so I'm maybe buttering you up a little bit by saying.
Well, there's a big surprise coming in the next month or two here regarding the website.
Really?
So go check it out now, and then check it out again in August.
All right. It sounds like there's a new website coming, or can't you say?
Yeah, I can say we're working on developing a new website, but the values will still be on there and they'll be a part of it.
All right. Well, we love our new website design. So if you get a chance to go over and take a look at our website, I had a big hand in helping to craft that, and our team did just a knockout, fantastic job on it. And
what is that site, Drew?
It is driverdrivenusa.com is what that is. But on your website, it says, our values are deeply held principles that we adhere to regardless of changing circumstances. We do not compromise on these values: integrity, service, leadership, and family. And I won't go through the whole list because you just did, but what I love is, and this will echo back to what we were talking about, is under service. The words under service is putting others first and doing everything we can to meet their needs, right? And so that's, even though you don't say humility is a value, but putting others first is that to me is humility, right? So again, when I talk about the similar cultures between the companies, this is what I'm talking about. And, I don't want to get into the theory of why I think that those values are similar, but Bill Turcotte was a great man who founded BJ Transport, now Driver Driven Transportation. And Lowell was a great man who founded Autumn. And I think that, if they got together and chatted, they'd probably be saying a lot of the same things to each other back and forth.
Well, I won't put you on the spot, Drew, but we would say that our values come out of the beliefs that our founders held and their Christian values, and that a lot of this stuff can be traced back to biblical principles. Yeah, we don't have to go any deeper on that. One thing that I wanted to mention, and I think it kind of ties a lot of this together, you had said that you never know the impact that you're making on someone. And when we're living out these values and we're treating people right as office workers or as drivers, everywhere we go, we're not just putting the paper down, but we're remembering that there's someone who's going to pick that paper up and rely on that and read it. The one thing that we don't always know, but that's important to keep in mind, is that those things that we do could leave a lasting impact on someone.
Absolutely.
Now, when you were here at Autumn, you really fit all these things so well. And you did things here in service that have left some lasting impacts. You know, when you came, we were still writing down all of our load plans on paper with pencils and erasing things and using little arrows and lines. And, you know, you came up with, why don't we put this on some spreadsheets? Why don't we build some tools here? And it was never about like, look at me, I'm Drew, I've created this great tool. It's how can I serve the company? How can I serve my team and come up with something of value? And although modified and tweaked, some of those tools that you created are still here impacting the drivers we have now.
Yeah.
When we have a heart for other people and we have a heart to serve and to work hard, it leaves an impact.
Sure.
And that's, you know, it's an example of creating a spreadsheet and how it's left an impact. But on a bigger scale, legacies are left. And now you come in here like this years later and sit down and we have this great conversation. You're an employee now, you're at another trucking company, but you come in here, you have positive relationships. It's catching up with old friends. It's seeing, hey, how are you guys doing? How's the company doing? How are things going? And it's just neat. You have left a great impact here and an impact on me in the way that I lead and the way that I hope I'm treating others. Yeah. And I want to encourage all of our drivers that are listening and anyone else to think about that. No matter where you are, you have a chance to leave an impact based on how you treat others.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That very generous comment, and I appreciate that. That means a lot. I'm trying to hold back the tears a little bit now, so there'll be some cuts. You put the Kleenex way on the other side, so I couldn't get to it. But
haven't made a guest cry yet. 11 episodes in. So,
you know, been talking quite a bit with the president of my company, Mike Hedstrom, who I consider to be a mentor, right along with Julie. You know, if there's a Mount Rushmore of my mentors, both of them would certainly be on. And it's amazing how similar those two are. Both are relentlessly optimistic people, and that's a wonderful gift to have in a president and a CEO. Both people who will always be honest with you, always correct you, but in a way that builds you up, not that tears you down. But I've been talking to Mike quite a bit about legacy, and what we've been talking about is that you'll leave a legacy, you know, kind of wherever you go, but it can't be about trying to leave a legacy. You have to care about the thing. It's not about who remembers that it was you that did it.
Well, that's that pride and that Instagram influencer mindset again.
Right. Or you know, if you set out to leave a legacy, that is a different thing to that. I'm setting out to accomplish this thing that's going to help people, and the legacy will take care of itself, or it won't. Right. And I do believe legacy is very important. I don't know if you still do Founding Fathers Day here.
We still do our Founders Day.
Founders Day, yep. And who happened to be a father of Julie. Founders Day, that was something that when I was here we instituted because it was very important. You know, Julie really wanted to, you know, remember, and obviously Bev too, you know, have his lasting legacy on the company. But also, one of the very difficult things, if I can share this, hopefully you can cut this out if Julie says that it shouldn't go in, but that the company had to be her vision now. It couldn't be Lowell's vision when Julie took over. And she couldn't be trying to approximate his vision for where the company went. It had to be hers. And she can be respectful of his legacy and all that he meant to the company and all that he did to build the company from nothing, right? But it has to be her vision. And it's just been wonderful to see how the company has grown and changed and developed with her as the president and CEO. And I suspect that a lot of it was because at a certain point in time, it became her vision for what the company was or should be. And that's so important. Your president and CEO is the visionary of the company, and they're setting the horizon line that everyone else is rowing towards or is shooting for, is running toward, whatever it is. They're giving that direction to do it, and they don't have to lay it out in detail, right? Julie has become a great delegator, right?
Yes, she has.
Which she'll be the first to admit. It was hard. It was hard for her in the beginning to let go. The company and the people the employees have really rewarded her for that. Really, truly empowering and being able to let go and trust that her people have the best interests of the company at heart. And that's really that's really so important and very difficult to do as an executive leader, is to have that trust, especially when you're someone like Julie, who probably could still go out and sit at everyone's desk out there and do the job probably as good, if not better, than the person sitting in that desk right now, still after all these years, because that's what she did for so many years. So I really applaud her for taking the difficult step of trusting her people, and it's transformed the company. It's grown the company, right? The company is larger than it's ever been. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, we're at all-time highs in a lot of areas, and it does go back to what we call the corner office and Julie's leadership and her delegation and her empowerment, which you can only do, to circle back, you can only do when you have trust that you've put the right people in the right seats on the bus, and that those people not only have the capacity to do what they're asked and the temperament, but also the passion. And when you have the right people with passion and you've set them free under your vision and your leadership, great things will happen.
Yep.
Now we've probably strained our listeners' ears more than any other time. I think this is our longest podcast yet, but it's been just packed with so many great things. I want to have another conversation with you sometime down the road. It's kind of fun to, especially talking about the books. And I can't believe you had the Patrick Lencioni quote right there a day after we talked about it here. But thank you, Drew, for coming and sharing your wisdom, sharing your experience, your knowledge. I'm grateful to have you as a friend and as a friend of the company, and good to know that you're doing great and you're building everything that you have into the drivers, that driver driven. There's a lot of room for drivers out there in the industry. Like we said, there's always going to be a need for trucking.
Yep.
So I would consider us friends, not competitors.
Right.
And wish you the best. I hope you can come back again.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. And whenever you want me back, whenever you think everyone's ears have recovered, I'll be happy to come back, and we can pick up where we left off, or try our hand at a new conversation.
That would be great. Well, thank you everyone for listening today to the Autumn Transport Podcast. If you have any questions about what you heard or any comments, you can send us an email at social@autumntransport.com. You can also leave us a comment or give us a like on any of our social media channels. At Autumn Transport is where you will find us. I hope that you will share this episode with friends and family. I think there's a lot for us all to learn as drivers and as just basic human beings who want to do the very best that we can in the world. Thanks again for listening. Drive safe.